Hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Please say hi on the chat. So this is the very first Shiatsu and the climate emergency webinar that we've ever run, actually, and it could very well be probably one of the most important ones that we ever do. So please say hi. Shakura's looking after the chat, and I'm going to go straight in and just share what we've got in store for you this evening in the next hour, and also in the other 4 webinars that make up this 5 webinar series. So thanks very much for tuning in. We've had about 300 people register for this introduction, so it's great to see some interest out there. Okay, so the idea behind the whole course, which is the next these 5 webinars, which we'll touch on today, is basically the interrelationship between ourselves, our client, our Shiatsu practice, and the planet. Now, to do that, we've had to enlist the help of some great friends of the Shiatsu Center here in Norwich, some great experts in their field, and I've already learned a huge amount just preparing for this webinar series. And so I'm really excited about the potential for in the next 5 weeks and for the next hour. Okay, so what we're going to do in the next hour, I'm going to give you an introduction to the webinar series. I'll show you how we've broken it down. We're going to have a video from Peter Ellington. She couldn't be with us live tonight because she is receiving an environmental award tonight. So she very kindly recorded a short video for us as an introduction, and she's going to be here in person next week for the second webinar. So I've got several videos for you, including someone from the UN, very important, via YouTube to listen to. And I've got a couple of UN-based videos for you. I thought what we'd do is also we'll do some body scanning and check in with our own nervous system and talk a little bit about polyvagal theory and how that links with how we respond to stress. Because the central theme that runs through the next 5 weeks, as you'll see in a minute, is basically how do we regulate our own nervous system appropriately to help our clients, our practice, and our society and the planet. Okay, so I've also got a video on the UN sustainability goals, which I didn't really know much about until a couple of weeks ago. And I'm going to say a little bit about the history and the role of Shiatsu in climate change. So that's the program for today. So here we are. We've got various presenters. You'll see that there's some people from the team. Dinah and Kat will be on the chat on the week 3 and 5. I've got a video from Peter Ellington today, where we're going to look into the introduction of it and the overview and introduce the presenters. Next week, really looking forward to this because Peter Ellington and Peter Ellington, they work together, and they're going to be looking at lots of interesting research on why we're not reacting faster to the climate emergency. And also they're doing some awesome work on how to practically make small businesses sustainable. And this is one of the threads that we're going to put through the course. So hopefully what we're going to be doing is applying it to the Shiatsu Center here, and hopefully that some of you or many of you will also follow their lead and follow that process so that we can do something positive as a small business. Okay, and then week 3, we're going to dig down into our stress and trauma course, and we're going to look at the theory and practice of treating anxiety, and particularly eco-anxiety with Shiatsu and Chinese medicine, linking it with polyvagal theory. And then we've got another special guest, week 4, Cindy Engel, who's done quite a few webinars for us. She's absolutely amazing. She's a research biologist, a Qigong teacher, and she's going to be explaining how the biology of change works and why it's so difficult to change sometimes. And then week 5, we're going to review and bring it all together. So here are our 3 guest presenters that we've got lined up for you, and just a little bit about them. Okay, we've got Cindy Engel. You'll be familiar with her if you're one of the New Energy Work members. Research biologist, as I said, Shiatsu practitioner and Qigong teacher. And she's particularly interested in the way that biology affects our ability to change. So really looking forward to that. And then we've got Peter Ellington, who's a thought leader. In fact, yes, he's actually basically taken on the whole method of accounting for small businesses, single-handedly formed a company, which we'll hear all about. And he's got an MSc in economics related to environmental environmental economics. He's also recently done a doctoral thesis about accountancy education, about how they can change the whole way that we think about how businesses work within a planetary context. And these guys, Fran and Pete, are just so interesting. They've really devoted themselves, and I'm sure you'll really enjoy meeting them. Really awesome. Okay, and then here's Fran. She teaches sustainability. She does a lot of educational webinars. You'll see her do a short video for us later on in this webinar. And she's also very good on environmental, social, government, and impacting, calculating the impact of businesses so that we can basically change the way we do things and put pressure on supply chain, on things that supply us. Anyway, she'll explain it to you in more detail than I can, but it's all very, very interesting and fascinating. Okay, so how about this? I've got plenty of polls, so let's get straight in. I would like to just find out, when we start, how urgent do you feel climate change is, from very urgent to not urgent at all, okay? And I'm going to run this poll. We'll just see how the group feel about that. Okay, look at that. We've got a really interesting pattern there where we've got, maybe you're a self-selecting group, you've signed up for the webinar. We've got 6%, 10% saying neutral, 20% saying urgent, and about 70% saying very urgent. Okay, so it's obviously an issue that we're all facing, and certainly my own personal experience doing Shiatsu, it's something that's coming up more and more with clients. So it's that time, I thought, to really think deeply about how we're going to deal with all these different threads that work together. So here we are. We've got Antonio Guterres from the UN just to speak to us tonight via YouTube. I've got a video lined up for him. It might take a second just to load. But this is a very interesting, very short YouTube video which precedes Fran Ellington's short, again, 10-15 minute video. Okay, so let's see what Antonio says about what's happening and what isn't happening. It's a 1 minute 30-second video. Try this. Let's just try this.
The jury has reached a verdict, and it is damning. This report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a litany of broken climate promises. It is a file of shame, cataloguing the empty pledges that put us firmly on track towards an unlivable world. We are on a fast track to climate disaster. Major cities underwater, unprecedented heat waves, terrifying storms, widespread water shortages, the extinction of 1 million species of plants and animals. And this is not fiction or exaggeration. It is what science tells us will result from our current energy policies. Some government and business leaders are saying one thing, but doing another. Simply put, they are lying. And the results will be catastrophic. This is a climate emergency. Climate scientists warn that we are already perilously close to tipping points that could lead to cascading and irreversible climate impacts. But high-emitting governments and corporations are not just turning a blind eye. They are adding fuel to the flames. They are choking our planet based on their vested interests and historic investments in fossil fuels, when cheaper, renewable solutions provide green jobs, energy security, and greater price stability.
Okay, how about that? No punches were pulled at all there, were they? Absolutely not. There is Antonio Guterres from the UN. So I guess the question is, because the thing that strikes me is because Shiatsu practitioners are very important healers within their community, their models, we model health. It's something that really I think we should really be thinking about and internalizing in our practice, because concern for climate change and how we're going to adapt, how we're going to deal with the stresses that are inevitably going to come, whichever way it goes. So that's kind of like the first thing. So one of the things, as we will find out in a minute when we talk about polyvagal theory and how stress affects the human being, the organism. A lot of how well we can regulate the nervous system depends on our agency. In other words, how much we think we can do ourselves to practically change things or to make a difference. Okay, so just for now, before we hear from Fran next week, which is going to, I hope, turn us around, let's just see how you feel right now about how much agency do you think you have? How much ability do you have to change things? Okay, a lot, a little, neutral, or none. What I do makes no difference. Okay, so this is the second poll. So it's really very interesting to see this. How much agency do you feel in addressing climate change? Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, now that's really interesting. Okay, we've got around 70% saying they can change things a bit. You feel you've got some agency, and we've got 20%, which is really quite a high proportion there, saying you've got a lot of agency then, and we've got about 8% saying neutral or no agency at all. Okay, so that's really interesting, and that's going to be a thread that's going to come through as we work through the course, as we work through the webinar series, because that's a really important aspect, and that's why all those threads, how we are ourselves, how we interact with our clients, and also how we run our practices, how we act within our practice, reverberates out in terms of that agency, which again reflects back into our nervous system. Okay, so here's Fran's video that she made specially for us this week, because as I say, she's actually receiving an award tonight, so for one of the environmental projects that they did, so she couldn't be with her, but she's put together this video, and it's basically the facts about, some of the facts anyway, and it's designed to lead on from the Antonio video. Okay, so here we go. Here's Fran. I'm just going to share that and get off the stage. Here she goes.
I'm going to talk you through some facts about climate change and sustainability and why Shiatsu practices need to act and adapt. This cartoon was created by Mackay and went viral internationally during the first COVID lockdowns in 2020. The original version depicted the first two waves, COVID followed by the predicted tidal wave of recession. It was mocking the idea that the solution to all our problems was to wash our hands and all would be well. Instantly, many people around the world adapted this cartoon and posted their versions in different languages on social media. They added the more important and scarier and bigger tidal waves of climate change and biodiversity collapse, crises that would require more than hand-wringing or regular hand-washing to mitigate. Mackay liked this view and reissued his own version of the four waves. Current evidence suggests that COVID-19 was a direct result of biodiversity collapse. COVID was one of a series of small waves preceding the tsunamis to come. Climate change is causing and is affected by all the sustainability issues facing society today. These 17 goals were created and agreed upon internationally in September 2015 at the UN Sustainable Development Summit. They define what a sustainable world might look like, having conquered the issues of hunger, gender inequality, poor health and well-being, and numerous environmental issues, including climate change and its knock-on effect for life on land and below water. Collectively, they make a good start for businesses who say they want to be sustainable. Trying to align with all 17 is impossible, so most businesses start with one or two that are material to their business activities. It seems to me that goals 3 and 13 might be a good place to start for any Shiatsu practitioner. But we have to ask, how does the way we do business impact these goals, either positively, after all you're providing well-being services, or negatively? And if each goal is not met, how will we need to adapt? We must assess the risks to our businesses and communities if faced with the consequences of lack of action on reduced inequalities, not reducing inequalities such as civil disruption, the scarcity of natural resources if we don't encourage responsible consumption and production, the weather extremes, drought, floods, famines with continuous lack of action on climate change, and the biodiversity loss and habitat loss and increased pandemics if we don't look after life on land and under the sea. I think Gro Harlem Brundtland's definition that you can see on the top right-hand corner there for sustainable development sums this up well. She was a former Prime Minister of Norway, and she said that sustainable development was about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Each goal is reported on every year, and this is the 2022 summary report for Goal 10, Reducing Inequalities. And while there are no surprises as a result of what has become known as an era of permacrisis, it does not make pleasant reading. The overview report for all 17 of the UN SDGs for 2022 opens with this statement: the confluence of crises dominated by COVID-19, climate change and conflicts are creating spin-off impacts on food and nutrition, health, education, the environment and peace and security, and affecting all the UN SDGs. The report details the reversal of years of progress in eradicating poverty and hunger, progress in improving health and education, providing basic services, and so much more. It also points out areas that need urgent action in order to rescue the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and deliver meaningful progress for people and the planet by 2030. So, some facts about climate change and why we need action. You watched a clip from UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking after the publication of the third and final instalment of the IPCC report in April 2022. The IPCC stands for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But he's been talking about this for many years. In 2019, at a Climate Action Summit, he said, "The best science tells us that any temperature rise above 1.5 degrees centigrade will lead to major and irreversible damage to the ecosystems that support us. But science also tells us that it's not too late. We can do it, but it will require fundamental transformation in all aspects of society: how we grow our food, how we use land, fuel our transport and power our economies. By acting together," he says, "we will leave no one behind." So, limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. What does this mean? It's an agreement made at COP21 in 2015 at Paris, and it was signed by 193 parties. COP stands for Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties. And in that case, it was signed by 193, which was 192 countries plus the EU, which acted as one party. And the agreement was to stay within 1.5 degrees of global warming temperatures since pre-industrial times, since around 1850. Now, if you think we have already warmed to 1.2 degrees and are likely to hit 1.5 degrees several times over the next decade, this is pretty urgent. So, how bad is the climate emergency? I cannot stress enough that we are in a climate crisis and the situation is dire. Man-made or anthropogenic climate change is a fact, as evidenced in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC 2022 report, which was the work of thousands of scientists. The IPCC reports take about 7 years to compile, making this potentially the last warning before the world is set irrevocably on a path to climate breakdown. The top image here shows you that whatever climate model you use, despite annual anomalies, the trajectory is moving us towards plus 2.6 degrees centigrade temperature rise by 2080. The quote there that you can see is from the WMO, the World Meteorological Organization, and it's from 8 months ago, May 2022. They were already revising this in November when they said the internationally agreed 1.5 degrees centigrade limit for global heating is now barely within reach. So to reiterate, we have already got to 1.2 degrees in global warming. We have 0.3 degrees before many tipping points send us into scenarios that we will see in the next slide. This table illustrates the kind of physical and economic changes we can expect based on varying global temperature increases. If I give you a few seconds to absorb the information here, I think that none of us would want the 3 or 5 degrees centigrade scenarios. Just take a close look. We don't want these scenarios, not just because of the 23 to 45% drop in global GDP and the stranded assets, but because of compromised food and water supply, loss of huge areas of habitable land and so on, whereas working towards a 1.5 degrees limit in global warming is likely to be economically viable alongside a just transition to renewables. And while there will still be loss and extreme weather events, let's face it, they are happening around the world as I speak, we might be able to adapt in time. So this tracker from the Guardian newspaper is literally counting carbon. It shows the parts per million, ppm, of carbon dioxide that the world can afford to release into the atmosphere before we reach 430 parts per million. 430 ppm is estimated to be the maximum we can allow for a fair chance of remaining below 1.5 degrees centigrade. When I first used this slide last October, the measurement was 417.9. It's already gone up to 418.3. It has been estimated that at current levels of emission, we will exceed the 430 parts per million within the next 8 years. So what has this got to do with small Shiatsu practices? Well, small and medium-sized enterprises make up 90% of businesses worldwide and affect the livelihoods of over 2 billion people. So we all need to assess the risks that future climate change will have on our businesses, on our practices in the long and short term. And we need to sort of think about the cost benefit of action versus lack of action. It will be more costly to do nothing. So whatever it costs now is a good investment. In the UK, small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, are responsible for just under half of all of the business global greenhouse gas emissions, and all business and industry is responsible for more than 25% of all UK emissions. So collectively, we can make a difference. In the next session, I will take you through some easy and affordable ways to measure and reduce your personal and business greenhouse gas emissions. The measurement is sometimes called carbon accounting, and this is what 1 tonne of carbon might look like if we could see it. The average Western person emits more than 10 tonnes of carbon dioxide a year. But because each greenhouse gas has a different global warming potential, we tend to give them a relative value to carbon dioxide. So for instance, 1 tonne of methane has a global warming potential 25 times greater than 1 tonne of carbon dioxide. This is measured over a 100-year time frame. So it's recorded as 25 tonnes of CO2e, carbon dioxide equivalent. And this chart uses those factors. It's a chart of the anthropogenic or human-generated greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere converted into equivalent units by averaging their global warming potential, as I said, over 100 years. The WMO report for COP27 on the 6th of November 1922 stated that concentrations of the main greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane and nitrous oxide, once again reached record levels in 2021. The annual increase in methane concentration was the highest on record. Data from key monitoring stations around the world show atmospheric levels of the free gases continued to increase in 2022. I'll explain more about the different gases and how we measure them in the next session, but I wanted to stress the urgency of reducing them now. So next week, I will be looking at some ways in which small Shiatsu practices and practitioners can calculate, track and reduce their greenhouse gases. And I'll also take you through some ways of creating a net zero strategy for your business and making sure that it's followed through, with the idea that we all need to get to net zero, i.e. emitting less than we are perhaps drawing down from the atmosphere by 2050. And Peter's going to take an academic look at the various reading material and ask the question, if it's that serious, why isn't society reacting faster? So thank you for listening, and I really look forward to seeing you all next week.
Okay, you see what I mean? Absolutely fantastic, isn't she? Absolutely great. And Peter's pretty awesome too, as well. And as Fran said, she's looking forward to seeing us next week. I'm going to pop the slides back up again and see what we've got next. Okay, so I thought I'd just find out a little bit about your own personal behavior. I'm just thinking back to your life already. Have you made any changes in your personal behavior because of climate change? For example, maybe change your diet, you change your transport choices, things like that, just to see oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to forget about that. And let's just see if I've got this. Oh yeah, have you got any? Yes. Okay, so let's find out about your Shiatsu practice, because this links directly with Fran's presentation next week. Let's see if you've made any practices now. I'm going to put this. This is like, for example, sourcing things, doing calculations on things coming in, or maybe you're heating it, things like that. Let's just have a look and see where we are right now. Okay, look at that. It's about 50, just around, look at this, already over half. We've got about 60% of you have made some changes and many changes. So I'm sure you'll be really interested next week to find out how you can take that even further. And those of you who haven't, you might be really interested to know. And again, this links back into the whole idea of agency, of being able to actually create change. And both Fran and Pete have really demonstrated that in their own business, and they've really been sort of kind of leaders in their field. So they're very inspirational like that, as well as being very well informed. Okay, so I thought we'd just change it up a bit and we'll do some energy scanning. I'm going to link this with polyvagal theory. So what we're going to do now is just think about the videos we've just seen, the Antonia one and Fran's videos about what's actually happening. And we're just going to tune into our energy, and I'm going to get you to draw your scan, and then I'm going to get you to analyze it using polyvagal theory. Okay, so I'm going to do it with you. I've got my pad here, right here. I'm just going to close my eyes. You can do it sitting or standing. And what we're going to do is just going to relax as much as possible, and just see what happens when we just think back to those two videos. And just tuning into your energy field. We're tuning in physically. Emotionally. And then mentally. And then spiritually, okay? So just tuning into all of those 4 levels. Think back to the 2 videos that we've watched and just see what happens to your energy. Don't worry, we're going to shake out in a minute. Okay. Now, if you can, again, just turn that into a picture, and we'll draw it as our whole body scan here on the chart. Okay, so I'm going to do mine. Okay, now if we do any work like this where we tune in and we tune in to any kind of stressful situation, it's always good to release it. And one of the best ways you can do that is by shaking, which is what I'm going to do now. And I encourage you to do the same. I'm going to get into this space here, tune into our energy field, and if there's any areas that feel really obstructed, or we'll just talk about that in a minute, or overactive, we're just going to calm down with breathing and do some shaking. Okay, so what I suggest we do is tune in, find any areas in the body that feel a little bit overactive or blocked, and we're just going to shake those areas. And extend the shaking right through the whole body. Okay, I'm going to shake out on all 4 vibrational levels. So first of all, tuning in on the physical level. If there's any physical obstruction in your body, we're going to tune in on that level, focusing in on any physical aspects. Okay, when we get onto the emotional and mental level, that's when we're going to use the breathing. I'm going to do a lot more about that later in the course of how to use the breath. But what we're going to do is we're going to elongate the exhalation and shake out, breathing in and exhaling out nice and slowly. Okay, so we're breathing in on the emotional level, breathing out very, very slowly, and that helps to regulate the nervous system. Keeping our attention down into our feet to keep that grounding. Okay, and the same thing on the mental level, so we're going to breathe in, breathe out, nice and slowly, shaking out, calming the mind. Okay, and then we're going to tune in on the spiritual level, which is again calming that down, relaxing, connecting with heaven and earth, opening up kidney 1, floating the head up, and just settling into our own energetic field there. Okay, excellent. So now what I'd like to do, now that we've managed to regulate our nervous system, we're kind of much calmer, and we've hopefully shaken out and released any reactions, we can now be a little bit more objective about what actually happened by looking at the picture. And I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put another poll here. You can have a look at mine if you like. There we go. That's my picture. And I've got a poll, which I'll just put up in a minute. But first of all, I'm going to put the slides back up. Okay, so you've drawn your scan. Okay, and we're just going to have a quick look at polyvagal theory. And the reason we're going to do this is because later in the course, we're going to go much deeper into how Shiatsu techniques and TCM interact with polyvagal theory. And I found dealing with stress and trauma within the practice, this model has been invaluable at reassuring clients that what's happening to them is a natural part of the nervous system, and it's not something to be ashamed of or something that they should be fearful of in itself. So basically, we've got the green, red, and blue zones, which represent the ventral vagal state where you've got social engagement. That's when you can be in the present, grounded, compassionate, and mindful. And that gives this kind of connection, social connection, which we're going to talk about again later on in various different aspects of the webinars that are coming up. So that's the green zone, and hopefully we're more or less in the green zone now, hopefully after we've shaken out on all 4 levels. I hope so anyway. The red level, that's the fight and flight, the sympathetic nervous system activation, the adrenal system, and that's when we get anxieties and fears and things like that, or they can also turn into anger, irritation, or frustration. Of course, the red zone is also the zone of activation as well. So it's kind of an essential part of the nervous system to create action. And that's going to be another key theme running through these webinars, because in a way we need that red zone in order to act. But the important thing is to be able to regulate back between the red zone and the green zone. Now, the trouble is, what can happen when we've got overwhelming threat of any kind, okay, which is above that line there where it says overwhelm. Then you go into the freeze state. This is the primitive part of the nervous system, the dorsal vagal system, that tends to create a feeling of helplessness. And what happens, various physiological things happen, which you can see on the right hand side, and we'll go into more detail later on. But basically you get that feeling of hopelessness, feeling of being trapped. Again, shame can come in because you feel you can't act and you should be acting. And that's because that part of the nervous system is becoming dominant. Okay, so what I thought would be very interesting is to look at, I know what I'm going to vote for, but have a look at your chart that you drew, the body scan chart, or remember it if you didn't draw it. And I'm going to run a poll. I really hope it's there. Let's have a look. Yes, okay. Thinking about the 3 zones, reflect on the videos, and I'll show you what it is. Yeah, okay, so look at the scan, think about the 3 zones that we've got here with the polyvagal theory, the green, red, and blue. Okay, in relation to climate change, which zone do you think you're generally in? The green zone, between the green and red, so you're going backwards and forwards, in the red zone, whenever you're in that relation to climate change, between the red and blue, so you're dipping into the blue, or you're in the blue zone. Okay, so I'm going to just see where we are as a group, because it'll be really interesting. We start doing energy exercises later on to work from that. Also, it's very important when we're understanding what's happening with our clients and how to interpret the diagnosis and so on. Okay, so I'm going to share that poll now. Oops, no, that's the wrong one. I'll just get rid of that. Sorry, I've got my polls in a muddle here. Right, here we go. Yeah, here we go. This is it. Here we are. Think about the 3 zones. Which zone do you think you tend to be in if you look at this chart? Okay. Well, look at that. Okay. This course is very important. I thought something like this may happen, and it just goes to emphasize how important this course is, because we're going to look at how we can help our clients and how we can help ourselves and our practice and the planet. To do that, what we'll need agency, which Fran and Peter are going to help with us next week. In other words, how to actually create agency within our behavior. But also, in order to effectively work with our clients, it's really important that we can work towards regulating our nervous system through that agency, so that we can basically be between the red and the green. And the reason for that is because we need to be able to model that movement for our clients to be able to regulate their own nervous system. Now, we had an interesting email that Diana told me about. Very interesting. Thank you. We have a lot of response, all kinds of response to this course, which is really interesting. And I'm going to put some links into the online course as we go along. And basically the question was, well, wait a minute, isn't treating eco-anxiety just the same as treating any other anxiety? And my argument for this course is no, it isn't. Because if you imagine you're treating someone who's escaped from a burning building or something, or escaped from a dangerous situation, and you are in your Shiatsu practice and you are sitting there aligned and everything, then you can obviously use your all the skills you've got, including your alignment and your own modeling, to help your client. The big difference in terms of how we are going to have to deal with our own practice, our own selves, our own relationship with our clients, our own Shiatsu practice, how we run it, and how that has an effect on society, is because we are in the same situation. So in other words, it's like we're both in the burning building. So if you imagine you're trying to do counseling and you're both in the burning building, it's very different from doing counseling or some kind of therapy work with someone who's escaped from it and you are outside of it. And that's why I've showed that slide right at the beginning about all those interactions, because I really believe that all of those interactions are essential resonances to create an overall response. And that's why I think it requires a different approach. And look at that poll, okay? Look at that poll. There's obviously plenty of work we can do towards that. Okay, excellent. So here we are. This is our challenge, okay? Really, we want to be able to move ourselves and our clients between the green and the red zone. We don't want to be always in the green zone. Maybe if you're a climate change denier and you think everything's going to be fine, we don't need to do anything, change our behavior, you can create a cutoff from reality and kind of fool yourself to be in the green zone. But actually, really what we need to be able to move into the adrenal and move out of it in order to act effectively, but also have an effective and some kind of nervous system regulated life that we can offer as a model. Okay, so it's essential that we do that to help our clients, and it's a massive challenge. And as we were with COVID, Shiatsu practitioners, as healthcare providers, as Fran pointed out in a video, we are right there at the front line, and we're going to be dealing more and more with that. So I think it's time to get ready. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that in terms of polyvagal theory, research has shown that successful adaptation to stress and recovery from traumatic situations is closely related to agency. So basically, when people get, say, trapped in a cave or something, the people that actively dig their way out, or the people that wait and go into blue zone and shut down, and they're rescued later, research has shown when they followed up what happens, that the people that activate themselves into the red zone have a better recovery and have better mental health as a result, as opposed to those that go into the blue zone. So we've kind of got a responsibility there to try and help our clients keep in that green and that red zone as much as possible. And that requires certain skills that need to be applied to understand what happens to the energy system when you start getting clients going into the blue zone there, because it's kind of different from when you're working with the red zone there. And we're going to go into a lot of detail with that later on in the webinar series. Okay, so here we go. Time is rushing past as usual. I've got a short video on the Sustainable Development Goals, something I didn't know very much about at all recently. So I can ask you this poll here. Let's just see if I've got it. Oh yeah. So before Fran's presentation, how aware were you about the UN's sustainability goals? Let's have a look. I didn't know much about them at all, actually, but I don't know, maybe you do know them all. Did you already know all about them? And put me to shame. Let's have a look. Oh, look at that. I definitely was in a minority here. Well done. Well done. Okay, look. 70% of you knew they existed. Excellent. And 13% claim you knew them all. That's absolutely amazing. That's great. So I just thought it might be worth, I've got a very short video. It might be worth just getting an idea of that, because Fran and Peter use those sustainability goals actively when they're working with clients to help them make a positive impact. So you're not just reducing your carbon, but you're making a positive impact. And that, again, from a nervous system point of view, is a really good thing. So let's just have a quick look at this. It's only 1.5 minutes. Just thought you might like to find out a little bit more about this. So here we go. Okay, so there we are. There's all 17 goals, and Fran's going to be linking to them next week, I'm sure, because that's one of the big things they do. Okay, time is flying. We've only got like just over 10 minutes left. I've got a few more slides and a few more things just to share with you. So that was the SDGs. Okay, just want to say a few words about Shiatsu and why I think it's right that we are right up there, right on the front line, as I say. And just thinking back to my own experience in the late 70s, early 80s, that Shiatsu has form, it has history in terms of environmental awareness, because when you think back to the original 1970s, we had Peter Dedman here on our summer school last year, and I can remember he was one of the founders of Infinity Foods, the first organic food shop in the UK, which I was very proud to spend 3 years of my life working there as I was studying Shiatsu. And that at that time, in the late 70s and early 80s, Shiatsu was very much part of the environmental awareness movement. It was linked to diet. We had the macrobiotic influences. It's kind of, I think we kind of maybe got a little bit lost in the 90s and the noughties there. We became more professional, maybe some of us, I don't know. But there's definitely a history there. And maybe it's time we, through the sustainable goals, UN Sustainability Development Goals, we can frame ourselves as part of that wider health awareness. Okay, the reason I think Shiatsu is part of the whole solution, apart from the fact that it is, of course, relatively low carbon in the sense that we don't use masses of chemicals to produce drugs and things like that. There's lots of other reasons that I'd like to go into a little bit later and a little bit deeper in when we get to part 5. But the reason I think that Shiatsu is so important is because we have practical knowledge, skills, and techniques on how to understand the nature of long-term stress. And we now know through polyvagal theory and through the work of other authors that we've studied over the last 10, 20 years, that long-term low-level stress can lead to trauma symptoms that we normally would associate with more acute trauma. That can happen if you have a sustained low-level background stress. And that we've seen that already in our poll there, when we had like 9% of us voted for the blue zone with our scan, okay? And that's because, okay, unless you're in the Pakistani floods or something like that, it's kind of more, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, it tends to be more of a low-level thing, hot days, fires and everything. And that low-level stress can have an effect on the nervous system. The other massive thing we've got to contribute, traditional medicine can produce, is because it's reflexive, we're reflexive, we're not just giving a drug to tranquilize someone, we are actually working on ourselves, and we're trained right from the beginning. It's reflexive, so we have ways to regulate our own nervous system, and we can share those ways with our clients. And the other thing that I think would be a fantastic thing for us to do, and I can see that many of us are already doing that, because we've already had that poll that you've already changed quite a lot of things. 14% of you have said you've made many changes towards sustainability. The more we model those UN sustainability goals and we model that kind of behavior, the more effective we have and the more agency we have. So I just think it's really important. Okay, so now we've just got 10 minutes left to just finish up if there are any questions about anything. But I just wanted to check in and find out whether you are already a premium member, professional member, free member, not a member, or not sure what your membership is, because that will influence slightly what's going to happen in the next week as we get you all kind of activated for the next 4 webinars. Okay, so let's just make sure I've got the, yeah, here we are, I've got the right poll here. Here we go. Okay, here it is. Poll 7. Are you a premium member, professional member, free member, non-member, or not sure? Okay, cool. Okay, so about half of you are premium professional members, and about a third are free members, and some of you are not sure. You can always find out. You can always email us, and we'll find out what membership level you're at. Okay, good, because this is how we're going to go forwards now. So basically, what we're doing is we're putting together this course it's made up of 5 one-hour webinars. This one is a free introduction. We're putting some extra resources in for you. And basically the theme is how to support ourselves and our clients and to make practical steps in our Shiatsu practice to make them sustainable. They're the themes, as I said. Okay. And basically the way we've done it is if you're a professional premium member, then it's all included. It's going to be on your dashboard in the next day, and we're already constructing it. And as the webinars are recorded and all the resources like the slides and links and things, we'll put them into the course, and then you can get a certificate at the end of it. If you're a non-member and you want to just hang out with us for the next 5 weeks, then if you'd like to give us 120 euros, then we'll give you a link and you can join the course. And if you're a free member, then you can have a direct link in for a 10% discount. Okay. And what I'm going to do is after the webinar, in fact, I'm just working on it today. I'll get those links sent out to you, and you can join in with us if you'd like to in the next 4 weeks that are remaining. Okay. So just to remind you, this is what we've done today. We've done the introduction. We've talked about urgency and agency actually as well. We've given an overview. You've met Fran via a video link, and Antonio from the United Nations. We've looked at polyvagal theory, and I think we've had some fascinating results from that poll. I'm really, really interested in that. Something we can work with, especially in part 5, body scan. Okay, so next week, really excited to have Peter and Fran Ellington. As I say, they are really quite amazing what they're doing, and as you can see already, they're very, very well informed. And they are very good at making things really important. Don't forget that 90% of businesses in the world are small or medium businesses, contribute 90%. And in Britain, as Fran said, SMEs contribute half of the carbon. So we are actually in a group of SMEs, small businesses, that can make a huge difference. So part 3, we're going to look at all the techniques, polyvagal theory, how we can regulate our client's nervous system and our own nervous system. Week 4, we've got Cindy coming in, biology of change. That links with Peter's presentation, by the way, is in why we're not acting faster. So really looking forward to that. And then finally, we're going to put it all together. I'd like to go a little bit deeper into Shiatsu, the theory behind it, and also kind of like traditional healing systems. Because indigenous people, you may be aware, indigenous cultures are actually one of the main resources that the planet needs to help us reach those sustainable goals. It's almost like we need to relearn them. And because Shiatsu goes back so far, Shiatsu has, I believe, built into it some of the resources that are going to be essential that over the next decades. And it's really precious that we hold on to those and spread them as much as we can, just like we did when we had the whole COVID situation, and we were able to spread out and support really the whole international community with Shiatsu techniques, even though we couldn't touch people. So now we can touch people, so we're kind of that's a big advantage. Okay, excellent. So we've just got one more slide, and that's the end of the webinar. So if there are not any questions, I'm going to have a quick look at the chat. Oh, really active chat. I'm going to download that and read that later. I hope you really enjoyed this introduction, and I hope to see you on the course over the next week, next 4 weeks. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you, Shakura, for looking after the chat for us. We haven't got any questions at all. I take that as a good sign. So thank you very much. I'm just going to put a heart in the chat, and then I will see you next week. Okay, cool. Thank you very much for your time, and see you same time, same place next week. And you can meet Fran and Peter Ellington on a live video link.